So first off, congratulations on the subject. It's a really interesting, provocative film, which I just watched. Um, First off, why don't you start off by setting up the premise for us and talk a little bit about who your character is and what transpires in the film.
I play Phil Waterhouse, a documentary filmmaker who, when we meet him, still sort of reeling in all the accolades that he received for his previous film, and he's starting to film his second, his follow-up project, I guess. But when we meet him, there's starting to be some sort of controversy surrounding his previous film. We come to learn that he filmed his subject's death, basically, right? So he's been following a kid who's joining a gang in Harlem, and ultimately he dies while the cameras are rolling. And so the film initially sort of raises these sort of questions, this sort of moral, what is the moral obligation of a documentary filmmaker? Which personally, I love documentary films, but it definitely made me see things in a different light, right? It kind of goes, there's potentially more than meets the eye here, and what happens is the tables are basically turned on Phil. It's almost tonally, it's really interesting because it kind of becomes almost a sort of a psychological thriller in a way. He's being followed and filmed by someone he doesn't know. The revelation later is that it's without giving too much away, I suppose, it's the mother of the kid who died on film. And so the tables are being turned on Phil. Ultimately, there's this dramatic third act confrontation between her and Phil. And it's for me, this movie just raises a lot of really important questions. I'm not used to doing stuff like this, not to say comedy isn't important, but the films that I've done specifically don't necessarily have much important things to say. So for me, that was a large part of the appeal. Also because, just dramatically speaking, I don't get to sort of access these kinds of things in the roles that I normally play. To that end, I was actually very scared to do this. And so that was part of the fun. But, it's interesting. We shot this movie pre-Black Lives Matter. And here we are, 2021. The world is a little bit different. I feel like some of the questions that the movie asks, now are being asked in these sort of, in more public forums, perhaps, it's interesting. I just think the timing of it all.
I agree. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of a meditation on exploitation of Black lives specifically, and you get that element of turning the tables in there. But talk about that a little bit. I mean, it's a difficult question about what are the responsibilities of someone who's making a documentary or in anything, a news program or whatever, to respect their subject and to not exploit the subject. What did you take away from the film after delving into these topics?
I think Phil doesn't initially anyway see any problem. My guess is that he thought that he was doing good, right? He was doing not only right by his subject, but he was, in a role of being able, where he was able to show a world and a community and the problems inherent to that community, to share it with a wider audience. I think Phil thinks he was doing good, right? But I think the question the movie asks for me, the big question is, should he even be doing that movie in the first place, right? Obviously, there's the death. He captures this kid's death on film. So specifically, it raises the question of what is his moral obligation there, right? Is there this sort of divide where he's supposed to stay on this side and the subject stays on that side? What could or should he have done more to help prevent this kid's death? That's the specific thing. But for me, the bigger question is, should this movie even be made in the first place, or at least by that filmmaker, right? Because in a way, I think just the fact that he's even shooting this and making that his subject, it sort of perpetuates that divide. It literally says, hey, I'm on this side. I have the privilege of being able to, show you on that side. And it is exploitative. It is, it just begs the question if just the simple fact that he can even make this movie, does that in and of itself just perpetuate this divide, right? So it's maybe he's not the right person that should be even making this film in the first place. And I think that's one of the lessons to come out of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Is, what rights do we have, right? Who's should be in what role, and tackling what subject matter. It's a very delicate thing, but it's understandable. Sometimes just the roles that people have, even if they're not necessarily quote unquote doing anything wrong, just the fact that they are in that role to begin with is something that just makes these disparities continue on.
No, it's fascinating to me that you made this film before Black Lives Matter really took off as a movement. So I'm interested. What did that experience of watching all these protests and this big cultural movement happen? How did that affect the way you saw this film that you just made?
I don't think I realized when we made the movie that there was a bigger question of, should Phil even be making this movie in the first place? I thought it was pretty simply, what is the moral obligation of a filmmaker when he sees that his subject is in trouble? Post Black Lives Matter, my question is, should Phil even be making this movie in the first place? Is it his right to make it? I mean, sure, but there's a problem inherent to that, I think, right? In that it just perpetuates the divide. That's what I got post Black Lives Matter. So I see the movie differently than when I actually made the movie, I think, in that sense. And, just in general, I feel like some of the questions that we're asking in the movie, or some of the things that we're asking the audience to think about, is almost kind of prescient. I feel like now the conversations are happening around the country, around the world, conversations that, maybe it would have changed the movie when we made it. I don't know, but I think it only helps. I think it's, it's an easier movie for people to sort of lock into and have a conversation about now than it was pre Black Lives Matter.
Let's dig into the movie a little bit more. Talk to me about what scene for you was the most challenging to film, and why.
It's without question the final act confrontation between my character and Anjanou Ellis's character. So that whole scene, I mean, I call it a scene, but it's literally the whole third act of the movie. Takes place in Phil's house. When I read the film, when I read the script, that was the scene that was, it made the movie on the one hand as a reader and ultimately an audience member watching it. It is so important and amazing, that scene. But as an actor, I was scared shitless, First of all, this is not the kind of film, I think I've said it before, it's not the kind of movie I'm used to making. Right. And I don't know that, 10 years ago, I could have done this movie. I would have passed on this movie if it would have even been offered to me, first of all, but I probably would have passed on it because I was too afraid. But I knew for that confrontation, I was going to have to access things and dig so deep and in a way as an actor that I've never had to before. And to be perfectly blunt, the actor post being having kids, and there's the actor that I was before having kids, and that is simply because I'm a different person having it. Like, it is just emotionally, I didn't realize that I had feelings the way I have now, having had kids, right? And I very specifically had to tap into all of that for that final scene, and I had wonderful help. Lanny Zipway, the director, was incredible. She knew, first-time filmmaker, she knew exactly what to say, how to say it, and when to me, to really instill in me the confidence that not only I could do it broadly, but also just specifically what to say to make me do the adjustments that were required. And then, Anjanou is just the consummate professional and scene partner. And she was, she knew when to sort of give me space. She knew when to help. I mean, she was really incredible. And she's just so incredible. She's just brilliant. But yeah, that was the scene for me that I wouldn't say dreading. That sounds kind of heavy. I was thinking about it nonstop. From the moment I agreed to do the film, I was sort of thinking about that confrontation every single day until it happened, and even for days after. part of me wanted to pass on the movie, but ultimately it's why I did the movie, was that scene specifically. I just didn't know that I could do it. And I was nervous about, you know, you read the script and you go, oh, this is a really important movie. I mean, this is, and you talk to Lanny and you go, oh, what she's trying to do here is incredible. And she's, you know, has a very specific objective and vision for this. And, you know, and she is so socially and morally conscious, Lanny is. And just, you know, she really wants to do good work here. And I don't want to be, you know, that's a lot of pressure. I don't want to mess that up, right? I don't want to be a distraction. Obviously, I come to the table with some baggage already, right? So, you know, which is to say nothing of my confidence in being able to do the part. It's just I already come and I've got to fight that, and so does Lanny. She has to sort of, you know, show a version of me that people are not going to sit there the whole time saying, "Oh, it's the pie guy." It was just a lot. It just felt to me like a lot of pressure. Maybe Lanny didn't feel it, but I know I did. And so, but I'm ultimately happy with how it came out. I really am. I'm proud of the work that we did. And I feel like, you know, I did the role justice, and Lanny is happy, and that's all that I could ask for.
Jason, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. We hope everyone goes out and sees the subject when it's released later this month.